this up. A couple was checking in for a flight, and the husband said, "My wife here is afraid to fly. Is there anywhere we can go where she can just sit on an airplane and practice?" A lady approached the counter to inquire about our arrival of a Toronto flight. So I punched it in, I looked it up, and I said, "It's going to be about 25 minutes late." She thought about that for a minute. She goes, "How can something that goes 500 miles an hour be late?" While checking in a passenger, I asked him for a photo ID. He said, "Of me?" A lady was coming up a jetway. She just deplaned our inbound flight and was overheard telling her traveling companion, "I had a draft on my neck the whole flight. I think the guy behind me had his window open." I asked a man for his passport. He looks around and he whispers to me, "Eagle." I said, "Excuse me?" He says, "Didn't you ask for my password?" I was working the lost luggage desk one evening when a guy comes up to me and he's got something in his hand. He says, "My bag is missing, but my name tag arrived." Uh-oh. I says, "I'm sorry, sir, can you describe the bag?" He says, "Yeah, it was a Samsonite when I checked it in Toronto." I said, "Well, since the name tag came off, can you list some unusual contents maybe to distinguish your bag from another?" He goes, "Yeah, one of your complimentary overnight kits. You lost it going up, too." Uh-oh. We had a new agent, and she's just off probation, and one day she's checking in a famous jockey, and in her bubbly nervousness, she says, "Would you like a small window or a small aisle?" Passenger, "May I have a window seat?" Agent, "I'm sorry, all the windows are gone." Passenger, "Won't it be kind of dark in there?" A gentleman comes up to the desk and he's inquiring about the arrival of a Vancouver flight, Vancouver to Chicago. When he was told that it'd be here in 6 minutes, he goes, "So it's on its way?" Now, that same new agent I was telling you about a few minutes ago is making a pre-boarding announcement at the gate, and it went something like this. "At this time, we'd like to board children traveling with small parents." I also heard a pre-boarding for passengers traveling with small infants. "This one too big?" This businessman was running to our gate, and the plane is just pulling away. He throws his briefcase down and he goes, "Every other airline at O'Hare is late, and you have to be on time." Then he pulls out a pen and paper and he goes, "Now what's that pilot's name?" We flew to 7 different cities to Canada out of Chicago. And when the agent asked the approaching passenger, "Where are you going today?" And the passenger says, "Canada," which we heard a lot. So the agent says, "Well, where in Canada?" The guy goes, 6102 Riverside Drive." Now, a pretty young gal comes up to our ticket counter, and her hair color may be relevant to the story. She says, "May I have an application for a flight attendant?" And I said, "Well, you have to be a Canadian." She goes, "Well, how do you do that?" A couple comes up, "Is your last flight of the day to Toronto gone?" I says, "Yes, it left on time a half an hour ago." "So we can't get on?" During a blizzard, a passenger asked a busy gate agent, "When is this bad weather going to stop?" The agent replied, "I'm sorry, there's no way of telling." So the guy yells, "Don't you live here?" An agent was checking in a young man and said, "Sir, what do you have in the backpack?" And he goes, "It's not a backpack, it's a parachute." And we had good safety around. An elderly woman approached our ticket counter and said, "I'm looking for a courtesy phone." The agent says, "For what airline?" She said, "I guess the most courteous one." "Can you tell me where the duty-free store is? I want to buy some gum." "Where is United Airlines?" "Well, it's the next building over in Terminal 1. "Well, how did I end up here?" This guy runs up and says, "What's the phone number for Italy?" We mostly flew Airbuses and Boeing equipment into Chicago, but one day we brought in a 50-seat regional jet, and this guy's looking out the gate window when it was taxiing in. He says, "Hey, what model aircraft is that?" And the helpful gate agent said, "Oh, it's not a model, it's full size." The guy then said, "Well, is it going to get any bigger?" And from the department of "Sometimes you can't please them." "When's your next flight to Winnipeg?" "We got one leaving in 20 minutes. "Nothing sooner?" We were checking in a small group, and they asked if they could sit together. I says, "I'm sorry, the flight is full today. I don't have 2 seats together." So he says, "Well, do you have 3 together?" For a period of time, we had flights from Warsaw that connected in Toronto and then came on to Chicago. And one night, this guy came up to me at the ticket counter. He says, "I know my grandfather was on that flight and I can't find him." I says, "Well, that's all right, I'll page him." He says, "No, you don't understand. He speaks Polish only and doesn't understand a word of English." I says, "Well, would you be able to help?" He says, "Yeah." So I dialed up the paging number, I handed him the phone, and he went, "Come here." Now, O'Hare Field being the world's busiest airport, we had a 5-story parking garage and we had several remote lots. So it was understandable when this guy came up to me and says, "Can I borrow your pen? I want to write down where I parked." So I gave him my pen, and on the back of his hand, he wrote, "At O'Hare." This couple was late for a flight, but they had an unusual excuse. The lady said, "You know, it doesn't say anywhere on our ticket what the address of the airport is." "Why is the flight late? Are there planetary problems?" "No, just a full moon." "Agent, I need to see a photo ID." Lady's fumbling around. "Is there a photo on my birth certificate?" Actually, one time this guy really did pull out a picture of himself as an infant. And the agent goes, "Yeah, blue eyes, blue eyes. Okay, yeah, good to go, yeah." This patient, young ticket agent was given directions to the gate to this lady, and he had to repeat them several times. Finally, she says, "Will you tell me again? I'll listen this time." Finally, this guy comes up to me at the ticket counter, and he's staring at me, and he goes, "I know you. You used to work in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan." I says, "No, I've never been there." He says, "Are you sure?" Anyway, Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you.